My name is Gail de Vos, and I'm a storyteller. I've been a storyteller here in Alberta for almost 30 years. I used to live in Edmonton, but I now live here at Seba Beach. It's sort of like a resort. I live right next to the lake. I rarely leave, for very good reason. I started off as a storyteller, or became a storyteller, because I took a course at the University of Alberta when I went for my master's degree in library science. One of my classmates was Tigan Anderson, and she encouraged me to tell stories. She also encouraged me to join TALES, the Alberta League encouraging storytelling. Together, we worked really hard. I became president of TALES. We both became co-organizers for the Storytelling Festival at Fort Edmonton Park. We introduced a program of resident storytelling in Fort Edmonton Park, which I did for almost 15 years, first with Tigan and then with Merle Harris, bringing history alive through stories. I write about storytelling. I've written many books and articles. I tell stories. I teach storytelling. I'm still visiting the schools, but mostly virtually now. And I believe strongly in the power of story. I believe not only is it our most powerful communication tool, but it also is very, very healing, both for the listener and for the teller. And so the story I'm going to tell you today is one, well, you'll see for yourself, or at least hear for yourself. Hello. This is a story that I always call my father's story, and I'll tell you why afterwards. The story took place a long, long time ago when there was a young king who decided that it was time for him to get married, to find himself a bride. Now, he didn't care if the woman was tall and thin or even pretty. He just really wanted someone with a very good mind. And so he decided that what he would do was take off through the town and villages of his kingdom and look for this very clever woman. But first, before he left, he took off his royal garments and put on the clothes of a peasant, and then he went walking. He walked and walked and walked, and one day he ran into an older man, and the older man was walking along the way, and the young man said to him, "Grandfather, where are you going?" And so the older man told him, and he said, "I'm going there too. Do you mind if I keep you company?" The old man thought, perfect. It would be nice to have company, and so he welcomed him. And they hadn't walked for very long when the young man turned to the old man and said, "Grandfather, should you carry me or should I carry you?" The old man thought, What? I'm not so old that I have to be carried, and he's not so young that I could carry him. I'm just not going to even mention this. I'm not going to answer it. I'm just going to walk faster. And so he did. And the young man kept pace with him. They walked again silently for a while, and then they stopped. There was a field, and in the field you could see the grain growing. And the young man turned to the old man and said, "Grandfather, is that grain in that field already eaten or not?" Already eaten or not? What kind of question is that? The grain is in the soil. It is not eaten. It's not even prepared to grow. This man is Michigana. I cannot even, I don't know even what to say. And so he didn't. He just kept walking. And he walked faster and faster. And soon they came to the walls of a village. And they had to stop, for there was a funeral procession going by. And as the coffin was carried in front of them, the young man turned to the old man and said, "Grandfather, do you think the man inside that coffin is alive or dead?" Alive or dead? Now, what kind of question is that? This is beyond belief. I cannot tolerate this. Young man, I live in this town. Thank you very much for your hospitality. I have to go now. Bye. And the old man started off. He hadn't gotten very far when he could hear the young man say, "Don't forget to knock on your front door when you reach your house." Knock on my front door. Knock on my front door. Knock on my front door! By the time the old man got to his house, he was furious. He didn't knock on his front door. He just pushed it open. And he knocked his daughter over. She went flipping onto the floor. "Oh, daughter, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that, but the man, he made me so angry, and everything he said was so crazy." "What man? What are you talking about?" "Oh, daughter, I was walking with this younger man, and we hadn't walked for very long, and he turned to me and he said, 'Should I carry him or should he carry me?'" Now, what kind of question is that to ask of an old man? "Oh, Father, what he was asking you was very simple. He just wanted to know if you should tell him a story or he should tell you a story. The journey is much, much shorter if you're listening to stories." But the second thing, you can't explain the second thing. The second thing is this. We kept walking. We came to a field, and in the field, you could see the grain growing. He turned to me, and he asked if I thought the grain was already eaten or not. Now, what kind of question is that? "Oh, Father, that was also very simple. He wanted to know if you thought the farmer had already sold the grain. If he had, then it was as if it had already been eaten." But the third thing, we got to town. There was a funeral procession. We had to stop. The coffin was carried in front of us, and he stopped and asked me if the man inside the coffin was alive or dead. Now, you can't explain that one. "Oh, Father, that's also very simple. He simply asked if you thought the man inside the coffin had children or not. If he had children, well, then his line would continue. But if he did not, then he was truly dead." Oh, daughter, I've been so rude. I need to find him and apologize. And so we went running through the town looking for the younger man, and he found him still in the peasant clothes, and he said to him, "Please stop. I'm so sorry. I now understand what you were asking. Please, come home with me." "Well, who helped you understand?" "My daughter. Please, let me get amends, please." Well, the young man said, "Certainly," and he accompanied the older man to his house. Because it was time for the meal, they sat down at the table. And because the young man was a guest, when the daughter came in with a platter of a whole chicken, she put it in front of the young man and asked him to carve it. And so he did. He cut off the drumsticks and gave it to the mother. He cut off the wings and gave it to the daughter. He cut off the head and neck and gave it to the father. And the rest, he kept for himself. Well, the father looked down at his plate, at that scrawny neck and that scrawny head, and he became furious. His face got redder and redder and redder, and he stood up, and he was just about ready to scream when his daughter said, Father, he did that very well. He cut off the drumsticks and gave them to Mother, for she stands and works all the time. He cut off the wings and gave them to me, for one day I'll marry and fly away from home. You are the head of the household, so that's why you got the head and the neck. And since there was no one else to share it with, he kept the rest for himself. Well, the father's anger subsided, and he sat down, and he looked at the young man. The young man was looking at the daughter, because he now realized that he had found that very, very clever girl that he had been searching for. And so he turned to the father and said, I would like to marry your daughter. And the father, who had learned something by now, turned to his daughter to see if she was willing to marry him. And the daughter liked the looks of this young man, and so she agreed. Not only did she get herself a husband, but she soon found out that she was now going to be queen of all the land. And that's the story of the daughter who was smarter than her father. I told you this was my father's story, and so I'll tell you why. For a very long time, years back, my dad was very ill, and I continued to learn stories, as we do. And it wasn't until he was better that I realized that every story I was learning during that time had to do with a daughter and a father, or an older man and a younger girl, and I was using these stories to help heal me. The first time I told this story was at a Tales concert in Edmonton. And my dad was finally well enough to come to the concert, and he was in the audience. And when I finished saying, and that's the story of the daughter who was much smarter than her father, he stood up and said, "It's not true. I'm much smarter than she is." To that day, and since that day, this has been my father's story. And I tell it as often as I possibly can, because he's no longer with us, and it hasn't been now for many years. But every time I tell the story, I remember that day, that pride. I remember that love. And it gives me back my father. Thank you.